Las Fierbinți has always been more than a comedy series. It is a mirror of Romanian society, a mosaic of contradictions and familiar archetypes wrapped in humor that feels both biting and compassionate. The episode Viață, dublă captures one of the most complex and subtle themes the show has ever tackled: the split between who we are and who we pretend to be. It is an episode that moves away from the loud laughter of village gossip and bar banter to expose the fragile border between authenticity and pretense. Watching it, one senses that the humor, though intact, becomes a thin veil covering deep existential discomfort. The title itself, Double Life, invites us to think not only about deceit, but about the survival instinct that leads people to create parallel versions of themselves. The episode begins with a scene that appears ordinary. Bobiță, the eternal bar owner and informal philosopher of Fierbinți, opens his establishment in the morning, complaining about the lack of customers and the rising prices of beer. The camera lingers on his gestures, on the repetitive rhythm of small-town life where routine becomes almost a second skin. But soon, a phone call disrupts that calm. Gianni, always restless, wants to meet to discuss an opportunity. The word opportunity sounds foreign in Fierbinți, a village where time often seems to stand still. Yet, as in many episodes, hope and illusion quickly become the driving forces behind the plot. When Gianni appears, dressed in clothes slightly too fancy for the dusty streets, the contrast between appearance and reality becomes visible. He talks about a project, a mysterious investor, a chance to change everything. But beneath his words lies something deeper: the human need to be seen as someone different, someone successful. Viață, dublă uses Gianni's enthusiasm as a metaphor for the Romanian dream of transformation. It mocks the absurd ways people reinvent themselves, yet refuses to judge them harshly. In a society marked by constant economic struggle, pretense becomes a coping mechanism. The heart of the episode lies in how each character develops their own double life. Celentano, the poet of the drunkards, starts writing serious verses to impress a journalist visiting from Bucharest. He rehearses lines in front of the mirror, shifting between sincerity and ridiculousness. His double life is not about deceit, but about aspiration. He wants to be more than what people see. In a touching monologue, he tells Ardiles that everyone has two versions: the one that drinks at the bar and the one that dreams quietly at night. This moment, played with perfect tragicomic precision, transforms the episode into something larger than a sitcom. It becomes a commentary on the human condition itself. Meanwhile, Dalida, usually portrayed as the village's cheerful hairdresser, hides her own secret. She receives messages on her phone that she quickly deletes whenever someone enters the salon. The gossip begins. Is she seeing someone from the city? Is she involved in something shady? The humor here works on multiple levels. On one hand, it mocks the collective curiosity of small-town life where privacy does not exist. On the other, it illustrates how isolation pushes people to construct separate emotional realities. Dalida's double life is emotional rather than material. She writes to a man she met online, pretending to be more sophisticated, more urban. The digital age gives her a chance to live differently, even if only in words. The director plays brilliantly with contrasts. The dusty streets, the crumbling fences, and the loud debates at Bobiță's bar form a backdrop of provincial normality against which every illusion shines brighter. The cinematography does not glamorize the village, but captures its raw authenticity. The faded paint, the slow gestures, the lazy sunlight. When Gianni tries to present a business plan using a crumpled piece of paper, we see the absurd distance between dreams and circumstances. The humor lies not in the failure, but in the sincerity of the attempt. There is a particularly powerful scene where the villagers gather around the bar to discuss rumors about who might be living a double life. Everyone accuses someone else. Branzoi suspects Ardiles of secretly working for the police, while Ardiles claims Bobiță must be laundering money. The dialogue becomes a chaotic symphony of suspicion and denial. What starts as comedy gradually turns into reflection. Each of them hides something, even if only a thought or a regret. In this village microcosm, hypocrisy is not evil. It is a form of adaptation. People pretend to be happy, brave, or moral, because reality would otherwise crush them. As the plot progresses, Gianni's grand plan collapses, of course. The investor never existed. The deal was a scam. Yet, the way Gianni reacts is unexpectedly moving. He is disappointed, but not defeated. He looks at Bobiță and says, "At least for a few days, I felt like someone else." That line, simple and unadorned, summarizes the episode's entire philosophy. The need to live a double life, to create an alternative self, is not always about lying to others. Sometimes it is about finding the strength to endure monotony and failure. The episode's humor is bittersweet. It no longer aims solely to provoke laughter, but to invite empathy. When Celentano burns his poems after the journalist leaves, we feel the weight of unfulfilled dreams. When Dalida finally admits that her online admirer stopped answering, her sadness is understated but profound. The series, known for caricature and exaggeration, suddenly reaches emotional realism. It portrays the quiet despair that hides behind jokes and gossip. What makes Viață, dublă remarkable is how it manages to remain funny while delivering such existential weight. The timing of jokes, the rhythm of dialogue, and the chemistry between actors create a sense of organic truth. Each gesture feels real, not scripted. The humor arises naturally from character flaws rather than from forced situations. This authenticity is what separates Las Fierbinți from other comedies. It laughs with its characters, not at them. One cannot ignore the broader social context. The double life motif reflects not only personal struggles, but also national ones. Romania, often torn between tradition and modernity, between rural values and urban aspirations, lives its own duality. The village of Fierbinți becomes a metaphor for an entire country trying to reconcile nostalgia with progress. The characters' dreams of escape mirror the collective imagination of millions who believe happiness exists somewhere else, in another life, another place, another version of themselves. On a personal note, watching this episode reminded me of small towns I have visited, where everyone knows everyone, and yet loneliness hangs in the air like fog. There is something universal in that atmosphere, the desire to be someone else while being trapped in familiar surroundings. Viață, dublă captures this tension with tenderness. It does not ridicule people for their illusions. It honors them as part of what makes us human. The final scene ties everything together with subtle grace. Bobiță closes his bar at night, turns off the lights, and sits alone for a moment. He opens a drawer and takes out a brochure from a travel agency, the same one he mocked earlier when Gianni mentioned it. He looks at it for a few seconds, smiles faintly, and puts it back. The gesture is small but profound. Even Bobica, the cynical observer of others' dreams, lives his own double life. Outwardly, he is content. Inwardly, he imagines a different world. The closing shot of the empty street, bathed in yellow light, leaves the viewer with a sense of quiet melancholy. From a technical standpoint, the writing is impeccable. The dialogues flow naturally, peppered with colloquial expressions that sound genuine without slipping into parody. The editing respects the rhythm of village life, allowing moments of silence to breathe. Music is used sparingly, which enhances the emotional impact of the few scenes where it appears. There is a short sequence with a radio playing an old Romanian song about lost youth. It anchors the story in a cultural memory that resonates with the audience. Comparing this episode to earlier ones, one notices a shift in tone. The first seasons of Las Fierbinți were more caricatural, focusing on slapstick and exaggeration. Over time, however, the series matured, integrating drama and moral ambiguity. Viață, dublă exemplifies this evolution. It blends humor and introspection in a way that few comedies dare to attempt. It proves that laughter and sadness are not opposites, but companions. What also stands out is the moral subtlety. There is no punishment for deceit, no moralizing resolution. Life continues as usual in Fierbinți because people's small hypocrisies are part of their survival. The show's genius lies in this refusal to simplify. It understands that everyone carries contradictions. Gianni remains both foolish and endearing. Celentano is both pathetic and poetic. Dalida is both naive and courageous. They live double lives, not out of malice, but out of necessity. If we look at the episode through a philosophical lens, it can be read as a meditation on identity. In a world of social media and constant self-presentation, everyone lives a double life of some sort. The villagers' lies and aspirations reflect a universal truth. The self is fragmented, fluid, and performative. The laughter the show provokes is therefore tinged with recognition. We laugh because we see ourselves in their clumsy efforts to seem better, richer, more interesting than we are. What remains after the credits roll is not the punchlines, but the faces. Tired, hopeful, absurdly human. Las Fierbinți succeeds because it treats ordinary people with dignity. Even in their failures, they remain worthy of empathy. Viață, dublă does not mock rural life. It celebrates its contradictions. It says that pretending is not always lying. It can also be dreaming. As I reflect on the episode, I realize that its message is disarmingly simple. Authenticity is not about rejecting illusions, but about understanding why we need them. In a small village where opportunities are scarce and routine suffocates, the imagination becomes a refuge. The villagers' double lives are their way of keeping hope alive. That makes the laughter gentle, the sadness bearable, and the story unforgettable. In the end, Viață, dublă is not just about the characters of Fierbinți. It is about all of us. About the silent moments when we look in the mirror and wonder who we might have been. About the little lies we tell to make reality softer. About the fragile balance between what we show and what we hide. The episode manages to turn that everyday hypocrisy into poetry. It does not offer solutions, only understanding. And in that understanding lies its beauty.